So I tried something new today. And, when you try something new, it's not always good. And, but you took the chance. You tried something new.
Sometimes new things suck.
Yeah.
That's right.
Still, though, it's disappointing when they do.
Mm-hmm.
I love pizza, as you guys may recall. I
do.
Pizza phone case. I go to Pizza Festival every year. People have been telling me for a long time, you got to try cauliflower pizza.
No.
You got to try cauliflower crust pizza because
Why?
it's low carb, but it's also delicious.
Those are both. The low carb thing may be true, but it's also delicious. Absolutely untrue. I have no
Dave.
proof of this other than I know what cauliflower tastes like.
Okay. See, I like cauliflower on its own, but I can now say after trying cauliflower crust pizza, it sucks. It fucking sucks. It is just not good.
I'm gonna file that under duh. I'm not really sure. This is one of those times. You know how you're never supposed to ask your children, what were you thinking? Evan, what were you thinking? I mean, I know you're not my kid, but jeez.
I don't know, Dad. I thought I would try something new.
I mean, I'm all for broadening your horizons, but next time just fucking drop acid. I mean, don't.
Like a man. The next thing I'm expecting Dave to tell me is, I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed.
That's actually true.
Welcome to Spoilerpiece Theater, the podcast that doesn't give a shit about spoilers. We just want to talk about the movies. My name is Evan Crean. I am editor for The Independent, co-chair of the Boston Online Film Critics Association, and co-author of your 80s movie guide to better living.
I'm Chris Jensen. I'm a contributing writer at SIVA Weekly, and I'm a member of BAFCA.
I'm Dave Riedel. I write for Salt Lake City Weekly and Orlando Weekly, and I am a member of BAFCA.
Yeah, we are.
And together, we're BAFCA.
We three.
We three.
All for one and one for all.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that was almost like the 60 Minutes intro. It's like, I'm Morley Safer. I'm Chris Jensen.
And I'm Andy Rooney.
I hate that. Okay.
All right. On this week's show, we've got a couple of music documentaries, which Dave watched. We've got The Rolling Stones' Olé Olé Olé, a trip across Latin America. We also have Rush, Cinema, Strangiatio 2019. And then I saw St. Agatha, which is a horror film on Netflix. And Chris saw the new release, Ready or Not. I don't know much about that, so I'm looking forward to hearing about it.
Chris, I have one question for you before we get to you.
No, there's no Fugees.
Ready?
What?
Okay. No. That's better than mine. Okay. We'll cut that. We'll cut that for time.
Listener, decide which joke was funnier because they happened at the same time.
Why don't we start out by Dave? Why don't you tell us about the documentaries that you saw?
Okay. So I watched. It just occurred to me. Henry asked me how to spell the word watch the other day because Henry has started to figure out that we spell words that we don't want him to hear, that we don't want him to know. And so he doesn't call it watching TV because watching TV doesn't mean anything to him because we don't have TV per se. We're like a cut the cord family.
Mm-hmm.
So he'll say like, I want to watch, which just means I want to watch,
I want to watch.
Yeah. So he walks up to me a couple days ago and he says, Dad, how do you spell watch? And I'm just like, oh my God, he is trying to figure out when we're talking about it so he can jump into the conversation. That fucking ninja, because we call him the ninja. And so I just lied to him and I told him I didn't know how to spell watch. So there you go. So anyway, that's apropos of nothing. The movies, the documentaries, the music documentaries I watched, yes, the first one, The Rolling Stones, Olé Olé Olé, a trip across Latin America. It's actually, I thought it was going to be just a like a straight up concert documentary. It's not. It's really about, and it's of course it paints the Stones in a very flattering light and all that stuff, but because they paid for it, et cetera, et cetera. But it's really cool. A lot of the cities they play in South America, they haven't played before. And, of course, they've never played Havana, which is where the movie ends when they played Havana in 2016. And it's really, really cool. And one of the things that you always, if you're a music fan and you're a rock fan, you kind of know how much South America fucking loves guitar-based rock and roll, especially like blues-based rock and roll.
Mm-hmm.
But then when you see a documentary where the Rolling Stones are playing and there are fucking 90,000 Argentinians like losing their minds, watching these 70-year-old men like basically stand in one spot because if they move too much, something will break off. It's fucking cool. Yeah. And the other thing is like some of the hotels they stay in are ridiculous. Like one, I can't remember where it is. It might be in like Lima, Peru, but Keith Richards is like staying in a hotel. They're all staying in the same place, but he's staying on the top floor in what I'm assuming is the penthouse. And you just see him, when you first see it, you see him sitting out by a pool. And then you realize the pool is on his balcony on like the 15th floor of this hotel.
What?
It's like, what fucking world does this guy live in?
Yeah.
And at one point he just said, I just consider myself truly blessed. And it's like, you fucking better, man. I mean, I don't know how you're alive, but it's just really cool watching them do their Rolling Stones thing. And I'm kind of joking about the way they move. Like Keith Richards moves the way he always moved. He kind of like walks 4 or 5 paces, plays the guitar a little bit out of time because he's paying more attention to looking cool than he is to playing the music. Ron Wood kind of holds everything together because he's, then tasked with playing rhythm because Keith won't.
Yeah.
And then Charlie Watts is kind of like, I don't know who I'm supposed to follow. I'm just gonna fucking like give me some headphones and a click track. And then Mick Jagger like literally just never stops moving. So, but like I saw them on the 50th anniversary tour, when they played in Brooklyn, and it was a great show. So they still got it. They there's so many songs to choose from. Like how they pick songs for their set lists is one of them will say, you know what, I'll bet you can't remember whatever. And then another one of the guys will go like, doesn't it go like this? And then they're wrong. And then they get out the CD and they listen to it and they're like, oh, it's in G. And so they listen to it once and then they play along with the CD and then they try to play it without the CD. And that's how they learn new, like songs they haven't played in years.
Yeah, I was noticing, this was years ago, I was watching a documentary or a concert film or something. I think it was John Mayer, and you could see on stage there's like basically a lyric teleprompter down there at their feet, and they can look down and read the lyrics. And I thought, yeah, that's fucking shitty that they need, the lyrics. But no, when you have that many songs, you legitimately can't remember the lyrics to all of them.
That many songs, and when you're performing, you are thinking about more than just the thing.
Right.
Like, anything can grab your attention. Who knows what the crowds are going to be like. And maybe something else, like it's like something happens in the monitor and you're like, is everything ruined? And then suddenly you forget where you are in the song.
Yeah. And and like every other music documentary ever made, it has like 5 or 6 moments where one of they'll be on stage and one of them will walk over to one of the other ones and whisper something in their ear while they're playing a song. And then they'll both laugh and not miss a beat. And you're like, you guys are playing It's Only Rock and Roll, and you're like talking about, what you had for breakfast. What the fuck is going on here? But I just love that kind of inside baseball shit. So, and there is just enough Charlie. I would say you need more Charlie in every Rolling Stones thing you do. But the Charlie you get is perfect. Like one of the first things he says on camera is like, well, I always thought, being famous in show business was kind of bullshit. And it's like, of course you did, man. And then he just like launches into a very short, perfectly Charlie Watts summation of music, and he just says, it's like I play the drums, right, and I don't really play them for myself. I play them for Mick and Keith, and that's fine because you can't play your drums at home because the drums are an accompanying instrument. You don't sit down and just like play your drums like it's a guitar or piano. It's like, And that's why Charlie Watts is in the Rolling Stones still after all these years, because he needs something to occupy his time. So anyway, so that's fun. It's a lot of fun. It's short. It's 100 minutes long, and 7 of those minutes are the closing credits because it's a big, big production.
I remember watching the Iron Maiden documentary about their tour. There's probably more than one, but one specifically where Bruce is flying them around, like he's piloting, which is nuts to me. That it's still, I've known that fact for a long time now. It's still crazy that he's a commercial pilot. But yeah, the Latin America portion of it was massive.
Yeah.
And it's really mind blowing. And I was watching it, like admiring it, like that. I don't know if I've ever been at a show where everyone truly lost their minds like that.
Yeah. And everybody, whether they speak English or not, everybody knows the lyrics to every song.
Right.
And the thing about Havana that's actually kind of funny is, so the Stones are going to Havana and then they get a phone call that says, from the Cuban government, that says, okay, so Obama's coming the day after you guys want to play. So we actually don't think that we have the resources to host the American president and then you. So do you mind delaying a little bit? And so then Mick is talking to, their manager about it. And he says, so how long has it been since the American president's been in Havana? And, his manager says, oh, I don't know, 60 years, 70 years. He's like, yeah, all right, we'll push it back a few days. And then he's like, I'll tell the other guys, and it's just funny. And I think it's really funny that they have they have their own individual managers, but then they have a manager for the band. But then Mick is the relayer. He's the messenger for everything when it comes from management, which is hilarious to me. So anyway, so that's that movie. You should see it. The next movie is Rush, Cinema Strangiato, 2019. I don't know if the 2019 is actually in there. I don't remember that appearing on screen, but whatever. The subtitle for the movie is an exercise in fan indulgence or something like that. And basically what the movie is the last tour, the tour they retired on, R40, is they played a couple of songs from each album, from the most recent one going back to Rush, the first album from 74. And the movie doesn't quite take that long because that was a long concert. And this is not a complaint because I saw it twice. But it's a really good cross section of songs. They don't spend too much time on 2112, which I have never understood the appeal of. And I'm a big Rush fan, and I hear the come up for 2112 and I'm just like, fuck, I got 20 minutes of this to sit through. Well, because then you know what's going to happen. It's like and it's just like, you're not Metallica. All right? I know you kind of invented this, but still. And I love Rush, man. I'd rather see Rush than Metallica. But so it's a lot of fun. It's kind of you get to see close up just how difficult the tour is for Neil Peart physically, and you can understand why he was the main factor in like, I can't do this anymore. Because there are moments when he's playing like the more difficult parts in like, Tom Sawyer or whatever, and he's grimacing because you can tell it's hurting something on his body, And he's always been a stone-faced kind of guy when he plays live, but he's definitely looking like get off my lawn kind of man. He's like, fucking gotta play, Distant Early Warning again. So for those of you who don't know Rush very well, that's on the 1984 album Grace Under Pressure. So, which they do visit. They do Grace Under Pressure. They skip a couple of the albums in the movie, which is fine. Nobody really wants to hear, Time Stand Still again. So, no love lost there. But it's just a lot of fun. The guys in Rush are just goofy, and they're just cool guys who fucking play awesome music, despite what Steve Albini says, the asshole. So
there's no way Steve Albini and Rush were ever going to be compatible.
Well, I know, but I just remember years ago when he was on, and I've never, fucking Steve, congratulations for knowing how to be an engineer. Like, nobody else can do that. So, anyway, he was on Maron's podcast, and he said something shitty about Rush, and I'm just like, of course, and I've never liked Steve Albini. As a person, as an engineer, nothing. And I'm like, it all makes sense now that you would just, like, make fun of guys who are, like, why bother, man? They're in a different realm. They don't compete with you. You don't compete with them. They're never going to record you, or you're never going to record them. I don't get it. I've gotten to a point in my life where I don't understand why people have beefs with, like, you want to listen to fucking Taylor Swift? Go right ahead.
Mm-hmm.
I like a couple of her songs. You know what I did last week? I didn't tell you guys about this. I was driving into town to do something. I was fucking listening to Nicki Minaj. It was great.
Nicki Minaj is
So,
great.
I thought you were gonna
she's
tell
the
me.
best.
I thought you were going to tell me you got into a disagreement with someone, but you walked away and you shook it off.
I was like, I
No.
wouldn't have done that if it weren't for Taylor. Thank you, Taylor.
That's right. I know. And I could have been listening to the sick beat, but anyway, I don't like that part of that song. It's kind of lame. So the Rush thing is cool. It's totally just for fans. It's not, if you've never been into Rush, if you're Steve Albini, this is not going to be the movie that turns you, So,
Steve
if
Albini. What?
I said, if you're Steve Albini, this is not going to be the movie that turns you.
I misunderstood.
Yeah. You're not going to become a fan if you've never been one. So my dad is not going to suddenly become a Rush fan if he sees this movie. But, if you are, then fucking rock and roll, man. It's a nice 2.5 hours. It's long, but it's also fun. It's got a lot of the goofy shit that they do in it, and and it's great. So you see it maybe. All right, moving on.
So I think the one thing I didn't get a chance to ask you is, where did you watch both of these documentaries? Where did you find them?
Oh, the Rolling Stones documentary is on Netflix, and the Rush thing was a one night only that played last night, but I couldn't see it. But I had a link, so I'm sure that in the next 6 months or so, it will be on all the streaming platforms.
Right.
Got it.
One of these Fathom things or
Yeah,
whatever.
exactly.
Yeah, I was just thinking like, oh, but does Dave have some type of, music documentary channel or something that he's catching these on?
Do you? I mean,
Nope.
if anybody did, if anybody I know, it'd be you.
Yeah, the thing that's funny is music documentaries, even for bands that you like, you would think, why the fuck would I watch this? But they're great.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you watch them? Anyway. Why did I ask that question? What a dumb question to ask. Why wouldn't you watch?
All right, cool. So then I guess I'll talk about Saint Agatha, which I watched on Netflix. Saint Agatha, more like Saint Agonizing.
Oh.
It seems, I don't know, there was a trailer, you do the thing on Netflix where you're scrolling through and you see a trailer for it, you watch the trailer, you think, oh, this seems like it could be all right. It's about this girl who goes to a convent.
Strike one.
The story takes place in the 50s, by the way.
Strike two.
This is hilarious because, like,
the role of Dave will be played by Cinema Sins.
I mean, one of the most glaring things that I couldn't unsee every time I saw it is any time money was shown in this movie, it was modern day money, even though it was supposed to be in the 50s. And it's such a dumb thing, but it's such a glaring thing to notice. If your movie is supposed to be in the 50s, could you not print out some fake old money? Like, why would you? It's so obvious what new money looks like. It's big, bright, large photos on the money. It's so obvious it's not 1950s money, and you just can't unsee it because there's just so many times the characters have like a wad of cash in their hands.
I was thinking about how, in Braveheart, historically inappropriate wear, like clothes, but it's like old Scottish clothes, like kilts. They're fucking wearing kilts. They weren't wearing kilts yet. That wasn't for like another 100, 200 years. That became a thing.
But I have a question about that. How many people who went to see Braveheart knew that?
But now, what I'm extrapolating from that is that 200 years from now, if they're still making movies, movies in the 1950s, you're going to have cell phones.
Oh, totally.
Like along those same lines of logic,
Got it.
Yeah. So Saint Agatha is a 1950s set story, small town Georgia. There's this girl whose name is Mary. She has an abusive alcoholic father. She has a little brother who accidentally dies she's not paying. She's like supposed to be watching him. She has this guy that she's, hooking up with, who says he's gonna take her away from her father and he's gonna take her and her brother. And she's with the guy, and the brother is climbing on the bathtub to reach his ship, which is on a shelf above the bath, and slips and falls, and then he dies. And
Does
then,
he hit his head or drown
yeah,
or something?
he hits his head, and then I don't know if he drowns or if he just dead from the impact of the head wound. She finds him in the bath, dead in the bath. Like, she had bath water. She got out of the bath, went to see her guy, and was like with him. Then this happened. And she finds out that she's pregnant. So she runs away with this guy, and he's a kind of a sleazeball. I mean, he's not sleazy to her, but he's kind of like a grifter kind of guy. And they run some scams together. She's not like outwardly a bad person or anything, but they scam some guy. He comes back and he robs them of all their money. So then they're broke. And then she goes to a soup kitchen to get food. And then this nun there says, here, you can come with, we'll come take care of you at the convent and everything will be okay. And I guess she decides for whatever reason she's going to go there because that seems like her best option. And she goes to this convent, which is kind of just like isolated convent in the middle of the woods. And you find out pretty much from the moment she gets there that the convent has been cut off from the church. Like, the church doesn't fund them anymore because like they don't approve of their methods. And it's very obvious in the beginning that this just fucking weird shit going on there. People behind locked doors and things like that. And, it's one of those situations where she's, you can stay and you can come and go as you please. But like, while you're here, you must live by our rules. And this is one of the funny things that one of the other things I just couldn't help. Like, I started noticing it and it just bothered the shit out of me. So like one of the first things is we live here by a vow of silence. Everyone is fucking talking all the time. And I know it's a thing where they're like, no talking. And they're like abusive to these, because you find out there's other girls there that are in the same position. They're pregnant. They have nowhere else to go. They stay there at the convent. They lock them up in this room. They don't let them do anything. If they make noise, they like abuse them. And so, quickly Mary finds out that she's way in over her head at this crazy convent. And, it's not scary. It's just gross. Like, there's just gross stuff that happens. Like, one of the first things you see is there's a girl they're all sitting down eating dinner quietly, and she gets sick and she pukes at the table, and the head nun makes her eat her puke because she's not supposed to waste food. It's just like lots of weird, gross things like that. And they're like drugging the girls, and their whole thing is that they wait for them to give birth, then kill them, and then sell the babies to people. And that's just, I don't know, it's just weird. It's just not scary at all, but it's mostly gross and mostly weird. Like, there's this whole thing where the mother superior, the head nun, like locks Mary in a casket and then, breaks her down over time and is like, your name's not Mary, you're Agatha, and you're going to do what you're told. And it's just one of those things where like she's like constantly trying to break out of there. Like her boyfriend shows up, he tracks her down, and she's like, no, you gotta leave, don't, because like one of the other nuns has a gun trained on him he's not aware of. Then they end up killing him anyways. She finds him. They do this whole thing where they like make her think that she's crazy, and they make her sign some stuff so she gives them power of attorney. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. It's just like a lot of nonsense and gross
or
stuff.
nonsense.
Yeah, somebody had to make that joke. I'm glad it was you.
So why though? Like, why does this convent suck?
Because they're shitty, horrible people that just care about money. Like, they're selling.
What's the scam?
They're selling the babies.
The babies.
They call them their what do they call them? Their donors who come like once a week and like inspect the nuns. It's fucking weird.
So who is it? Just them? Are they part of a larger racket?
No, it seems like just they're isolated. Like, the head nun is making the money, and she pays like her deputized nuns to keep all the girls in line and like beat them and stuff.
Deputized nuns.
Yeah.
And the location of this convent is where?
Just in the middle of the woods.
Middle of the woods.
Yeah, in like rural Georgia, I guess is where the movie's supposed to be.
So what do they do with all the fucking money? Like, why are you running this
Good
racket if
question.
you're just there?
Yeah, just selling and having money.
Well, I'm in
don't fucking
exactly
know.
the same place, except now I have this stack of paper.
Chris,
Like that doesn't.
that's the first time anybody thought that. I just want you to know.
What's
The,
that?
the filmmakers never sat down and were like, "Hey, why are they doing this anyway? What
Fucking
do they
money,
do with
I
the
don't
money?"
know.
Right.
Nobody said that.
And
Yeah.
not that people don't do horrible, corrupt things for money, but like there's similar things that the church has already done that weren't for money.
Right.
They were for like power, prestige,
Yeah, or just
favor with the
a
church.
feeling of moral superiority.
Yeah.
Like all the stuff with the movie Philomena, like that whole situation.
Yeah, it's more believable. Well, first of all, because that actually happened, but
Right.
it's also more believable that somebody did this out of a feeling of religious superiority, or that they were doing something for the greater good, or that they actually did have these opinions towards the women who were in the situation. It's not believable that nun mafia, like it's maybe it's believable that like an organization like this is in league with some other thing,
Right.
If they never show any other criminal enterprise, then
no,
it's
I mean
just
that's
cash.
I mean it seems like the cops are in their pocket because the cops show up and they convince the cops to leave without doing anything.
But
after
that's like
Mary
that's
calls
insurance,
them. Right?
You know, that's that's not like, hey, I'm gonna start this whole operation so I can pay off some cops.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
wow.
There's other gross stuff. So one of the times that Mary or Agatha tries to escape, she trips and falls and her arm lands in a bear trap. Oh. So her arm's all fucked up and they bring her back in and they make her stick her arm in a vat of salt water. So her arm's all fucked up. And then there's another time where she tries to get away and then they put her leg in a vice and like break her leg or her ankle or something like that. And so there's like a part later on where she's trying to sneak around and then she steps wrong, puts too much weight on her ankle and like busts her ankle. She's crawling around, flailing around. Her whole thing is that she comes up with the plan. Basically, she steals all the money and then uses the money to bribe the other nuns to turn on the Mother Superior. And then after they do that, one of the other girls that she gets in on this gives the rest of the nuns poison and poisons the rest of the nuns. So they all like either die of poison or the head nun, they lock her in a casket in the casket and leave her down in the basement. And it seems like that's the perfect moment to end the movie. She's like in the casket freaking out. But no, they like leave it so that like the police come and find the mess, basically. And then nothing. It all feels so pointless. Like I said, it's just gross. There's a scene where Mary starts giving birth and she's run away outside and this one of the evil nuns with like a scar on her face has chased her and she's like, please help me give birth and like I'll pay you or whatever. And then the lady delivers the baby and is like going to take it. So Mary takes her umbilical cord and strangles the nun with it. Yeah.
I knew you were going there too. And I was just like, well, first of all, how do you have the strength? You just gave birth. You know, there's that. But also, yuck.
Yeah. It's just a lot of grossness without any payoff, really. Is
there any like sort of swing for the fences metaphor statement, like don't you see that what you do is whatever, or something that like sounds like a thesis statement?
No.
Anywhere buried in this?
No. I don't think so. It just kind of treats it like it is what it is. And I think the best part of this movie is the location that they picked for this convent. It's fucking creepy. It's a creepy old house with just the right, style and decoration to just, I don't know, it just gives you the willies.
Yeah, I understand. It's like, hey, I got a creepy house. Want a fucking movie?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Let's do it. That weird Denise Richards T-Rex movie was apparently done that way. I was looking that up.
What movie is this?
What?
Tammy and the T-Rex. Look this up. It's this movie that came out in the 90s and it was weird and then went away without a second thought. And then it came out recently in the last year that it was going around festivals, the gore cut. So it was just this regular movie about this T-Rex. I never saw it, but it was that the director, somebody said, hey, I've got this animatronic T-Rex. You want a movie? Like, you can have it for 2 weeks. And he just made this whole movie around the fact that he had this. And then he made it.
Well,
now
why
there's-
not?
Yeah.
I mean, why else do you climb a mountain? Because it's there. You
Yeah,
know? So
sure.
why not make a movie? Because you got a free T-Rex.
Paul
It's a-
Walker was in this.
yeah.
Holy
it's,
shit!
It's an artifact. It's my intention to watch the gore cut when it's more readily available.
By the way,
But,
do you notice who has top billing? Terry
Newsweek?
Kaiser, Bernie
Oh.
himself from
Right.
Weekend at Bernie's.
Yeah, sure. You know.
Of course, he's in it.
Yeah, this movie sounds more interesting than the one I watched, which was
Yeah.
just so. It was just so, I don't know. It was boring. I was just bored by it, and I wasn't even scared. I was just grossed out, and not even like, oh my god, I can't believe it's so gross. Kind of. It's just it's just icky.
Okay. Well,
It's just icky.
thanks for the heads up. You said horror movie called Saint Agatha. That's not what I was envisioning.
No,
No.
I was hoping for better.
Yeah. Like anyway. Okay. Well, I guess this brings us to. I'm not hosting, but I will. Just
Yes,
Take,
go
I'll
for
take
it.
the, I'll
I
take
was
the
taking a
reins.
sip.
Brings us to a much better horror movie.
Mm-hmm.
Ready or Not, although it is much more a comedy. I mean, it's a lot of people running around trying to kill this one person, so it has that survival horror aspect to it. But this is a class rage fueled satire. And Dave, you were asking if Samara Weaving would, whatever the question was if she's up to it, if she's good. She's so good that it's hard to imagine this movie without her. It's hard to imagine it or working with someone different.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I think about a movie and I think, there's a lot of steps between writing, financing, pre-production, production, post-production.
Right.
Roles get shuffled around. Sometimes you hear that someone famous was up for this role that became iconic. And you think, oh, that could have worked, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
The chips landed where they did, and this is now part of our, in our brain that this person is Indiana. Tom Selleck is not Indiana Jones.
I was just thinking of Indiana Jones, but
Or
I
Tim
think, I
Matheson.
think he would have been
Right.
just as good, you know?
Yeah, it
Tim
would have been a
Matheson,
different
not so
vibe.
much.
It would have been a different vibe. But I think it would have been good. You can't
Yeah.
help but make them be good.
Have you seen the screen test?
No,
You can actually watch the screen test with Tom Selleck, and he's not bad. He
No.
is actually pretty good.
right. But that's how good she is. Because the movie, it has an absurd premise, and the scene where the husband is explaining to the wife, so it's this couple that gets married in this. I'll get to the bigger premise in a second, but the scene where he's fully explaining it is absurd, and he's like, you watch him delivering, like explaining why this is the way it is, and he's also sort of like, well, I've never really had to say this out loud before kind of expression. And then she has this slow realization from, like, she's already realized her life is in danger, but the like, this is new, oh my god, is this real? This is real, like, geez, we got to work together. And then she's like pissed off. He's like, wait, you knew and you didn't tell me? And so the shifting in emotions in that scene alone is remarkable, and it helps seal the larger deal of the movie. It would still be really funny. It would still look really good. It would still be a lot of fun, even without a scene like that. But that's the sort of moment where you go from having fun to really being like, I can't wait to see where this takes me. So that's how good she is in the role. You've also got a lot of really great people who I've never seen before. I was looking up. It's a lot of Canadian actors. Everybody who's not somebody you already know is Canadian. So like Andie MacDowell is in it. She's a lot of fun. She doesn't get to play roles like this. There's Henry Czerny, who, if you watched the political thriller in the early to mid 90s, he was in it. He was the sort of smarmy bad guy. But he gets really theatrical. He gets really big. Adam Brody is there.
The OC.
The OC. And he's, I remember when they tried to make him a big movie star after the OC, and it didn't take. And now I think he's really landed. If you want to compare this movie to You're Next, he's like the Joe Swanberg role.
Okay.
Except a little more, not quite as dickish and self-interested, but he has that same thing about him. He's there's a more disaffected quality to him. He still has a moral core, where Joe Swanberg is like just totally fuck you.
He's such a great dick in that.
Yeah. The comparison to your next, it doesn't really go so far. Really, the only similarity is that it all takes place in one. Actually, your next takes place in one location and the location next door.
Mm-hmm.
This only takes place in the house. And it wasn't until I was writing my review that I was like, that was all the house and like the surrounding grounds. Like she runs out to the road at one point and like the barn in there on their property. But the whole thing is in the house or like in the yard at the wedding. Like that's such a tight concept. And it's all one day. It's like an hour before the wedding, that night at midnight to the next morning. That's the movie. So it's Samara Weaving. She plays Grace. She's marrying an heir, a member of the Le Domas family. L-E
Le
space.
Domas.
It's a really weird name. I'm wondering if it's an anagram, if it
Is
translates
it
to
supposed
something.
to sound like dumbass?
There's one point where Henry Czerny says it where like it's like, does that if it's meant to sound like dumbass, it's not a joke that makes sense in the movie. Maybe it's just like they need a fucking name. Okay, let's call him dumbass. If that's what it is, then that's something. But I think there might be like it's kind of like an impish thing. Like it translates to this funny word in some language, or it's an anagram. It's such a strange name that's what I think. I think it's one of those two things. They are a family that made their fortune in games, being like tabletop games. It's kind of like Milton Bradley style. You know, the opening shot is like down this hallway of like all the different games, the lining in their like estate, their grand estate. And here's none of them are real. They're made up, but they're all evocative of like 50s, 60s, and then into the 80s. The first scene in the movie takes place 30 years ago. It's two younger brothers. They're running around. One says, "Here, hide in there in a closet." And then there's a guy who's bloody being like, "You got to help me." The kid yells, "He's in here." Then a bunch of people with masks and crossbows come and kill the guy. And there's a bride who's sobbing. And then it's 30 years later. And then it's their wedding. It's Samara Weaving and this guy, a guy who I don't know, but I looked it up and I hadn't seen anything else he was in before.
Is it Mark O'Brien?
Mark O'Brien, yeah.
Yeah, I remember him in 'Halt and Catch Fire, which is
Right.
one of the best shows that nobody ever watched.
Yeah, so it's a lot of people who like. I looked them up, and you're in things I've heard of, usually TV or movies that just are not on my radar. But yeah, a very solid cast. So yeah, it's Mark O'Brien, Samara Weaving. They're joking around before the wedding. You get a lot of information in this conversation. Where like he's sort of estranged from the family, or he's embarrassed by it's like a little more than quirky. Like there's something that he's like, I kind of fucking I don't really need all this. And she's really excited, and you find out later that she was a foster child, and so the notion of like having a permanent home is one that's really valuable to her. And so. Yeah, they get married, and she's introduced to all the people in the family, and they're like, I can't wait to like get to know you. There's people who are really excited to bond with her, but then there's a couple people who have this like, ooh, you're a commoner, fuck you, and then there's people who are very protective of the family, and so then there's after the ceremony, the husband says, there's a thing we have to do. It's tradition, and it has to be done. At midnight, we're going to go into the basement or parlor. There's a special room, and you're going to pick a card. And, you know, our family made its money in games, and we're very tradition-oriented, and we're very tight-knit. So you're going to draw a card, and that'll decide what game we play. And that game, at the end of that game, you'll be part of the family. I think it's that if you win, you'll be part of the family, or it's just like, this is what we do. Mm-hmm. And there's at one point Henry Czerny, he's the father. He says like, if you pick the card, if she picks that card or something like that, are you ready to do what's necessary? And he's like, ugh. And then they go and they pick the card. And it turns out in the past it's been things like backgammon. It's been things like any number of.
Can you die playing backgammon?
She picks the only one that requires death.
Ah, of course.
And the last time it happened was 30 years ago. And the time before that it happened was it's so rare that kind of no one really actually entertains the possibility that she's going to pick that card. And when she does, it's a moment of silence. It's this like, there's a long story about before the family made their fortune, the great-grandfather was a merchant marine, and he got this box from this guy, this mysterious guy who promised him wealth if he played a game with him. And then ever since then, it's if you could open this box, you put a card in the box, it comes back out, it says the name of a game, you play it. That's the tradition. The family believes that something very bad will happen to them if they don't fulfill this tradition. Some people actually believe the tradition, or believe that
The bad juju.
yeah. Some people are like, it's just what we do, and don't think anyone's ever gonna have to kill anybody ever again since the last time it happened. But yeah, so Sheen's like, are you guys serious? Like hide and seek? Like, okay. And then Henry Czerny like takes her around and says, okay, well, you could just stay hidden until dawn. That's what we'll do. And to make it fair, we turn off all the security equipment, all the cameras. We play it like previous generations did. There's no advantage we have over you. And then that's when so she hides in the dumbwaiter, and then everybody else gears up using old weapons, using their grandfather's weapons, hatchets and muskets. Like nothing
Muskets. I
nothing
love it.
modern. There's a crossbow, and the guy who gets the crossbow is somebody married into the family, who's like, I don't know how to fucking use this thing, and neither do any of you. And you see him later, and he's like, he's hiding in a room, and he's looking at a YouTube video of like guys in the swamps, and he's like, here's how to use your crossbow. And that's the tone of the movie. It has there's like a really it's the right kind of nastiness. You know, everybody's kind of like everybody's on edge in ways that are fun to watch. They're not just insulting each other. Because honestly, the ties are fraying. Like Adam Brody is miserable. He's not in love with his wife. His wife loves the family, and she is more into the game than he is. Adam Brody, he's also a drunk, and he's like sort of just like removed himself from responsibility of taking over the family. Henry Czerny is trying to be a patriarch, but it's not holding. In-laws are like just not manageable, and Henry Czerny's sister is, as it turns out, is the one whose husband was killed that night 30 years ago. But she's turned into the most gung-ho, no, we have to fucking kill her. Come on. Because a lot of people are like skeptical about whether something's going to actually happen to them.
Mm-hmm.
Turns out that the reason they have to do it starts to sound more and more supernatural as time goes on. And the moment that here's when she finds out that she's actually in danger, is she's like, I'm tired of waiting this dumbwaiter. So she gets out, and she like is walking over, and she like is pulled into a room by her husband and says like, hide behind this. I need to tell you this. She's like, but a maid comes in, and one of the drunk in-laws is like, I found her. Bang! Shoots her in the head.
Oops.
And so she hides behind the Samara Weaving hides behind the bed.
Mm-hmm.
And then the family comes in and is like, fuck, you killed whatever her name is. She was my favorite one. And it becomes a recurring joke where this one very excitable, very coked out person who married into the family
Keeps accidentally killing the wrong people.
accidentally killing maids. Because at one point she like grabs the crossbow and she shoots one through the head. And everybody's like, you stop doing that. What else? Some other stuff that happens. When she manages to get out of the house, the security system is like the doors are unlocked. She runs to the barn. She falls into a pit that has a lot of dead bodies in it, and very deteriorated dead bodies, including the body from 30 years ago. It's a skeleton with the bolts sticking out of them.
Oh.
What else? To jump to really, it's a lot of fun along the way. At one point, what I said about like, is there a swing for the fences sort of metaphor statement? At one point, she says, the rich really are different. That's it. That's what this movie is. Is at the end of the day, they are more interested in protecting their status, their class interest, than not killing her.
Right.
Well, that's true.
Yeah, and so
I mean,
that's
in real life, aside from the killing. I'm sure rich people would kill poor people if they could.
yeah, something like this would happen if it were just not frowned upon.
Yeah.
And it's sort of like what The Purge goes for too, except this is funny, and this is satirical, where The Purge is like, we're one step away, guys.
Yeah, any day now.
Yeah. One of the funnier moments is, so there's this, I think he's a butler or a chef or something. I don't think he's related to them, but he does a lot of things around the house. He's part of this whole operation somehow. He knows that she's gotten out of the house and she's running around. There's a road out beyond the fence. He's driving the car. She manages to kick his ass, and she's taking the car, and she presses like the OnStar or whatever the security system is, the tracker, like, and can you help me? Can you call the cops? And it's like a tech support guy who's clearly reading from like a manual about how to handle something. Like, they're trying to kill me. I'm calling, like, da-da-da-da. And he says, actually, this car has been reported stolen, so I'm going to have to shut this off. I'm really sorry. And then she like he remotely deactivates the car, and she's like, what the and then she's just like, the air just drains out of her body in disbelief. And the guy's still on the phone. It's like, is there anything else I can do to help you? Okay, bye. Have a great day. It's it goes between really dry like that and really just over the top people flipping out. And at the end, Adam Brody is the one who starts to feel some sympathy, and he's the one who goes to help her. Her husband is the one who's like, after all this, if I had told you this, you weren't going to marry me. And then he like goes and tries to hug her. There's a moment of like safety, and he does that, and he's trying to like say like, I'm really sorry about all this. If I told you, you wouldn't have married me. And then she backs away, and he goes like, but now you're not going to marry me anyway, are you? And then he yells, she's in here. So he's the one. Adam Brody, when he's trying to rescue her, he gets shot in the throat and dies.
Ooh, gross.
And
Wait a minute, Adam Brody gets shot in the throat?
yeah, he dies.
Ooh.
There's a lot of gurgling in this movie. There's a lot of like, somebody gets shot in the head, they don't die right away. They gurgle. Somebody gets whatever, the blood gurgles. That's a recurring thing.
Okay.
Samara Weaving has an amazing scream, by the way. Like, and the directors, I think, realized this partway through and be like, we're using this as much as we can. Mm-hmm. And they don't overplay it. You just, every time you hear it, like, man, I can't believe you can do that. Eventually, it turns into like, she's chained to a table and everybody's wearing robes, and they're saying these Latin prayers that are clearly like Satanized versions of Catholic prayers. And then they start yelling, "Hail Satan," and they're ready to sacrifice her. And so anyway, there's a lot of running around. There's double crosses. Some people get hurt along the way. She's cornered in a room, and then everybody looks out. It's like, oh my God, it's dawn. And the sun's coming up, and the window opens, and everybody backs away like they're going to be vampires. Like, and then they do that for like 15, 30 seconds. Nothing's happening. Nobody's evaporating. And then the aunt is the one, and people are like, oh my God, it was all bullshit. Then the aunt is the one who's like, we have to kill her anyway. We made a promise. And then she runs over with an axe, and she just explodes. Then everybody who does something who's like, okay, I'm going to take you out now. Like, I'm going to kill you now too. That person explodes. People who try to run away, they run out of the room. 1, 2, 3, that you see the explosion from the other room. And suddenly she's the last one left alive. She looks at this empty chair next to a fireplace. The fire sort of like does that, and you see like a shadow of a body who's sort of like a ghost, like a spiritual figure, just like nods at her, and then goes away. And she goes, "Fuck." And then she goes outside and she waits for the emergency vehicles, and she lights a cigarette, and she's covered in blood, and that's the end of the movie.
Well, that sounds like a lot of fun.
It's a hoot.
It does.
I didn't even tell you all this stuff, like of course they can't tell you everything. It always moves. There's always something happening. It doesn't, even when it does the same kind of joke a few times, it's still funny when it repeats itself.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was going to, I didn't think. I was worried it was going to be the kind of movie where it played its hand too frequently, or like it leaned on one aspect too much. It's going to be like, we're just going to do what other movies have done, except we're not afraid to push the limits. And then it's just smarter than, once you clue into the satire of it and you just watch how great the performers are and how well they all work together. And like it wears its class anger on its sleeve proudly. It doesn't hide that metaphor at all.
Mm-hmm.
So then I look up the directors. They're involved in Southbound, which is like the anthology movie.
Oh yeah, that was good. I liked that.
Yeah.
Oh, VHS.
At
This is
VHS,
the
yeah,
VHS
them
guys.
too. Yeah, exactly.
Or some of the VHS guys.
There's this sort of collective radio silence. Some people are in it. Some people work with them. Sometimes they direct a movie. They direct movies with people. So it's two guys from them who headed this up, and it has that same. Imagine like a funny version of one of the stories from Southbound, maybe mixed with your next.
Yeah,
And-
I dig it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would totally be into it.
Samara, this is probably the best candidate for number 10.
No kidding.
It was Us for a while, but I think Us is actually more good than a number 10 spot. We'll see if that works out, but this is the kind of underdog, but also has something special going on for it that might make the number 10 spot.
Interesting. So
And Samara
wait,
Weaving is a contender for Best Actress.
now, if it's number 10, would it also be your number 50? If there
Yeah.
were okay.
Yeah, that's always implied with my number 10. I think there are movies that would have been my number 10 that I had to bump because I had to make room for this underdog. So there you go.
Cool. You've spoiler pieced me into wanting to see Ready or Not.
Yeah.
Me too. I mean, I wanted to see it anyway. I was bummed out that I couldn't make the screening. So
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. The screening was fun too. They had they poured sparkling cider, and there was like a big wedding invitation that I watched I watched the reps like put fake blood and smear it before the crowd got there. And there was a contest. If you dressed up in wedding attire, you would win something. It was good. It was fun. Usually when promo screenings go over the top like that, it's usually frustrating. It's like, God, can we just get to the movie? But this was fun. There was one obnoxious person who sat behind me. Well, there were a couple of obnoxious persons who sat behind me. One in particular was like, too cool for school. I know this thing, so I'm going to say it when something inspires me to. Like, so it's I think Fox something, or either Fox Searchlight, Fox something comes up, and she goes like, "Don't you mean Walt Disney?" Which is a really stupid thing to say for something that somebody who thinks it's smart, like when the buyout of Fox,
Right.
like. They're going to be like, "Oh, you got us." Like, what is the hope when you say something like that? And why do you say it so fucking loud? There was no indoor voice on this person. Anyway, but she didn't ruin the movie.
Good.
it still makes me hate most people though when I hear stories like that.
Yeah.
Because everybody's like that to some degree, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I guess so.
I mean, they're not, but there's always somebody who's like fucking douchey. They want you to know how smart they are.
True wisdom comes in knowing that you know nothing.
Whoa.
Whoa. Dust, wind, dude. Philosophize with him. All right, now we're just quoting Bill and Ted.
Yeah.
So yeah, okay. So see Ready or Not. I would say do not fucking see Saint Agatha. And it sounds like you need to see, if you're into that kind of thing, Rolling Stones, Olé Olé Olé, A Trip Across Latin America, and Rush, Cinema Strangiato.
What does that name mean, by the way?
They have a song called Live Strangiato.
Oh.
You're like, I was expecting a more complicated answer than that.
The subtitle of the song is An Exercise in Self-Indulgence. So,
Well, this has been another episode of Spoilerpiece Theater. Thank you for tuning in. You can find the show anywhere you get podcasts. But if you're listening to us, please rate and review us. That help more people find the show. If you like the show, tell a friend. If you don't, as we say, tell an enemy. Either is appreciated. If you would like to get in touch with us, you can find us on Facebook. We're Spoilerpiece Theater. We are on Twitter at Spoilerpiece, as well as Instagram at Spoilerpiece. You can send us an email, spoilerpiece@gmail.com, and you can give us a call.
862-21-PEACE.
Leave us a message, and we might play it on the show. At the bare minimum, we'll probably talk about it.
Yeah.
And if you really, really like the show, check out our Patreon, patreon.com/spoilerpiece. Sign up, and you'll get exclusive audio. Like this week, we talked about Veronica Mars. When we have other stuff, we have polls you can vote on. You can pick movies for us to watch. There are lots of goodies there, so definitely sign up for that. We'll make it worth your while. And my name is Evan Crean. I am editor for The Independent. I am co-chair of BAFCA, and I am co-author of your 80s Movie Guide to Better Living. And you can follow me on Twitter and on Letterboxd as Real Recon.
My name is Chris Jensen. I'm a contributing writer at Seville Weekly, and I'm a member of BAFCA. You can find me on Twitter at @Etiburite. Find me on Letterboxd, K Jensen. That's KJENSON.
And I'm Dave Riedel. I am a writer for Salt Lake City Weekly and Orlando Weekly, and you can follow me on Twitter and Letterboxd as Dave Sees Movies.
And we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Later.